Hello everyone. In today's tutorial, what we're going to do is we're going to take a crate model and unwrap it, take it into Photoshop, create some simple textures for it, and then we'll actually bring it back, those textures back into Maya and kick out a cool Arnold render. So let's start with the file, the crate. I'll just bring that over into. Okay, so overall, relatively simple. Depending on the use case for the crate, you might even get something a little bit simpler, just a box. But for this crate, we have some simple extrusions to kind of make it a little bit more interesting. So the first thing I'm going to do is I need to bring up my UV editor. So I'll hit U on the keyboard, and that brings up the UVs. Another thing we can do is right click these UV, and that puts us in UV mode. So if we want to get to the UVs, you can come up here, UV editor, and I am in the modeling tool, modeling menu set. Okay. So U is pretty easy to remember though. So I just hit U, go to my UV editor. Alright, so right now we don't have any UVs. So let's create some UVs. The easiest way to create is in your UV toolkit. If you expand the create tab, you can see we have all these different ones. So what I like to do is when I'm unwrapping something for the first time, I'll go through these and see which one works the best. So if I hit automatic, yeah, it unwraps it, but then it starts breaking. Like these white borders mean that they're UV seams, right? So you can see here, like, this is not attached to these, which isn't attached to these. So for something like this could work, I think, depending on what you're texturing. But I want to keep the UVs even simpler than this. So I basically want to get it so these faces that I'm selecting are all on one UV island. Okay, so you can see here, this is one UV island. So right now, this box actually has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 UV islands because each face is kind of broken up right now, except for these ones. These ones are all one UV island. Okay, so what we can do, so I'm going to undo, or if we want to like kind of reset, I guess we could select them all and then just do a planar that kind of resets them. So it resets all the seams. So it basically deletes those seams and sells them. So what I'm gonna do is let's select this face, and if you hit Shift period a couple times, that will grow your selection. So basically, I want to break this off into its own UV island. So to do that, I am going to hit planar, see what that does. So you can see right here, it did what I wanted it to do. It split it broke it out, those faces, into its own UV island. And you can see the seams are right here. However, it doesn't look good here. So let's undo. And something we can use is camera based. So I'm just going to kind of quickly position it. It doesn't have to be perfect because I'll show you guys some techniques to kind of clean it up. So camera based, oops. And you can see here, I broke off this into one island. So we do have some overlapping UVs we got to watch out for. So we got to take care of that. And if you have a hard time seeing like, oh, how do you know that's an overlapping UV? Well, if we come here to the top of the UV editor, this icon, anything that's blue, that means there's no overlapping. But once it starts like showing shades of purple, you know there's overlapping going on. So you can see there, we got some overlapping. So we'll clean that up. So the first thing I'm going to do, I think, is break all these faces up into their UV islands. This is kind of my workflow. I'll always like cut in seams or and break things up into the UV islands that I'm going to want to work with. And then I'll select each UV island and kind of tweak that as needed. Just a couple things. I didn't really explain it. So right now we're in the UV editor, and you can get to like the move, scale, and rotate tool just by hitting W, E, and R, just like our viewport. You can go to edge mode. Notice how it moves the adjacent edge too. That might be more apparent if I get one more out here. So I'll go over that stuff because I think we want at least one more face. Another thing is you can see these overlapping islands on our, or overlapping faces on our viewport space too. So anything that's red. Heat map. So this one is useful for seeing where there's distortion going on. So you can see here, if I take this edge, start moving it out, start shifting to blue because it's being stretched. Red means it's being compressed. So that's a useful view too. Alright, so I guess I can keep on overlapping just so we can make sure. Alright, so back to kind of what I was saying before. Let's break these up into their own UV islands, and then we'll kind of refine them from there. So again, I'll select this face, control period, or shift period, to grow my selection. And it's kind of hard to see with that red on there, like I am selecting that though. Let's do camera based again. Just drag this out and double click. So if I double click a face, it will select the whole island. So I'm just gonna kind of move those down there for now. Face, shift, period, camera based. Shift, period, and click camera based. Okay, so we're kind of breaking these up. So now this, like, you can't see it because of how that planar unwrap did it, but basically we're looking at it, this UV face like this. So all we have to do is like rotate down to it and hit camera based. Select this one, up at it, hit camera based. Okay, so obviously we can see we got some jankiness going on. These are not perfectly squared. So really what you want to do is, even in 2D space, yeah, you'll have a little bit of distortion depending on the model, but you really want to make sure these kind of match the shape of your 3D model as best as you can. Obviously lining these up is just going to make it easier in Photoshop to kind of texture stuff. But we can clean it up. So we have our top, and it's good to like know which island, because the topology is all the same for each one of these islands. So you kind of have to make a mental note of what's going on. So bottom, top, and we just have our sides, and they're adjacent. They should be anyway. So if I go to edge mode, you can see getting this edge and this edge, this edge to this edge, this edge to this edge. So when you go to default edge mode, so you can see I have edge mode selected here, here, and it's the same as going to right click edge. You can see if I select one edge, it selects the edge, the one edge in the model. So since we broke it in our UV space, this one edge has like two edges in UV space, but it's still selecting two. Now, if you want to select one of these individually, you should be able to click this icon here, and this is our UV select. And what you can do is you should be able to like select that same edge, but you're only selecting the one in UV space. So something's up with my Maya right now. Excuse me, my nose. Something's up with my Maya right now. We can see it if we go to vertex mode though. And it should work like this for edges, but for whatever reason I'm having an issue right now. So if I just go to like our normal like right click vertex, or like this icon or this icon. So if I just go here, you can see it's gonna move all, because this is really one vertex in our 3D space, but we've broken it up to make these UV islands. So you can see it's selecting all of them. So let's say we just want to select one of these individually. That's where this UV select comes into play. So you click this icon, and now when I click, I'm only moving one. The same concept should apply to edges, but again, I'm going to have to like reinstall Maya, I think, because I cannot find any information on it. So yeah, that's kind of some navigation tips. Alright, let's clean these guys up. So what I can do is a couple different things. So first for these ones, let's kind of fix this overlapping issue. So we could manually like come in, scale this face down, and try to line it up. But honestly, there's a quick tool that we can use called Unfold. So if I collapse my Create tab, just to keep things cleaner, and click Unfold, I have some functions in here. So let's just double click here and let's hit Unfold. And you can see that does a pretty good job of making that straight. Yeah, it's tilted, and we'll fix that later, but that's not a bad job. I don't know why this is still red, because clearly it's not overlapping anymore. Up there it goes. Okay. Let's click here. Unfold. Double click here. Unfold. Double click here. Unfold. And fold. And unfold. Okay, so now we kind of fix, or we didn't kind of, we did fix the overlapping issue. And we have nicely spaced polygons. If we go to that heat map, you can see we have a little bit of distortion on here. So this polygon right here is kind of a smaller to get these sides to fit in. So that's why it's got this really slight red hue to it. Just because it's compressed just a little bit. But for our purposes, this is going to be fine. Alright. Now, what we have to do is kind of orientate these so they're straight up and down. This is just going to make things like texturing a lot easier. And it's going to look cleaner, and we'll be able to pack them a little bit more efficiently. So let's double click. If we go to, where is it? Oh, it's actually in the Unfold. Straighten UV show. Oh, so I don't know if it's my Maya, because I feel like you should be able to double click and you select a UV island or a UV shell, and you click this and it should straighten. If I go to edge mode, like, and hit it, it works, but then it snaps everything together. Oh, can I not undo? Okay. So I think what we can do is go to face mode, just double click, select the whole UV island, and hit straighten UVs, and that works. So I'll double click here, straighten UVs, straighten UVs. Now you might run into an issue like this, where it doesn't do it, and you're like, it just did it for 3 in a row. Well, let's help it out a little bit. Let's just go to our rotate tool. Let's kind of rotate it close, and then double click straighten UVs, and then it will fix it all the rest of the way. So this one's probably too extreme too. You can see it, gotta help it out. So let's rotate it, straighten UVs, and straighten UVs. Okay. So depending on how you unwrap this stuff, so right now I can tell, like, just by eyeballing, this square is a little bit smaller. Well, in 3D space, like, this should be the same size as this group of faces, right? So this is without, there's something called Texel density that we have to keep in mind. I'm not going to go too much in detail about it, but pretty much all we need to understand is, like, if this face is the same size as this face in 3D space, well then in UV space, this UV face and this UV face should be the same size. If they're not, and you paint the same resolution texture across these two faces, well, one's going to be more pixelated because it's going to have less space for less texture resolution, okay? So we want to make sure all these islands are the same size in relation to each other. Easiest way to do that is to go to transform, and this was a big tool. It's got a lot of things in here. What we can do is where it says Texel density. Right now, we could get one, so maybe we just select this one and we go to get. Or you can just enter a number, it's whatever. We're not going to get too much into the specifics of what we're doing. We're just using this to make sure all the islands are the same size in relation to each other. So now what I'm going to do is select all of them, and then I'll just hit set, and you can see how they resize. So now they all scaled up to be the correct size in relation to this face, because this is the value we got. Now, I don't have to necessarily get that value. I can hit 50 here and just select them all and hit set. For our purposes, it doesn't matter. So if we were to scale these, we will want to select them all and scale them down. Because ultimately what we want to do, oh, and I'll show you guys this in action. I forgot to do that. So if like this polygon's like stupid big, right? And then we display a texture on there. So if you hit this icon, this will show the checker pattern. You can see, since it's bigger, it's got a lot more resolution to work with. So we're cramming more. We could think of these checkers as pixels. We're cramming more pixels in this space than we are in all the other spaces. So this is going to be like a super crisp texture, and this is going to be pixelated, essentially. So that's why we want to make sure they're the same texel density, same size in relationship to each other. So let's select these all and just set them to 50. So right now you can see like I got like some crazy stuff going on. So let's turn that off. Well, really what we want to do is this UV coordinate system, and it's called UVs because one axis is U and one axis is V. So that's just distinguishing the axis in 2D space, because we already use X and Y in our 3D space. So that's kind of a cool tip. So we need to fit all these basically in this one UV space. So these are called UDIMs. So if I hit this back, you can see how we have U1 V1, U1 V negative 1, U1 V negative 2. So each one of these represents a different UDIM space. Or you could call these different UV tiles. I don't think that's necessarily correct, but I'll refer to them as UV tiles. But I think you really want to call them UDIMs. So we want to fit all these faces into one UV tile, one UDIM, okay? Because right now we would have to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different texture sets, and these are overlapping. So we gotta fix that. So the easiest way to do that is turn that off. We need to fit in this one UV tile. So I'll go to, let's collapse some of these so it's a little bit easier to read. So let's go down to arrange and layout, select all of them, and hit layout. And what that does is it nicely packs these in that one tile for us. Something I want to do. Okay, so that looks pretty good actually. I think we're going to get a little bit of waviness going on in these side faces, but I'm not too concerned about that for this asset. Alright, so what I want to do is I kind of want to scale these down just a little bit so I can give my texturing a little bit of padding between UV shells. Now, if you're doing like mobile game or something, you might want to pack this a lot better. And by better, I mean you want to pack it tight. We do have this empty space right here. For our purposes, it's fine. But really, we want to try to avoid empty space because these pixels are just eating up calculations and whatnot. Especially in real-time render engines. But what we'll do is we'll select all of these faces, go to our scale tool, so R, just scale them down a little bit. And what that will allow us to do is move them around so we can give them a little bit of padding. That's what it's called. So another thing I want to do is I want to make sure, because I'm going to texture things on like the sides and the top, I want to make sure I understand like which UV island is which face on this box. So this is the top. So maybe it would be better if I put the top up here. Okay. I know this one's the bottom because I didn't do an extrusion here. So that one's going to be easy, but these other ones are the same. And then I want to make sure I'm reading this going from one face and then just going the same direction. So this one should be next to that one. We'll read it like a book, so we'll go and then we'll come down. So okay, so that one goes there and that one goes there. Another thing that we probably have right is we want to make sure these are all facing the right way, especially the ones on the side. The one on the top and bottom don't matter so much, but we want to make sure all these are facing up, because what we don't want is it to be upside down, right? Because then it's going to throw our texturing off. So you can see I select it here. So if I'm drawing in 2D space, I think this is the bottom. If I have an arrow pointed this way for up, well, really, you can see this face is supposed to be at the top. So just make sure you're conscious of that, and your islands are facing a direction that makes sense to you for when you go to texture. So these ones all look good. They're all facing the right way. Something else I want to show you that's pretty cool is you can actually like affect the pivot. So just like in 3D. So if I hold D and or just tap D, you're in edit pivot mode. Hold V, you can snap where that pivot is, and then we can hold V again and like, oops, hit D to get out of effect pivot mode. Hold V, and we can snap these and move them. So we know that's like perfectly in line. Is this nitpicky for this? Yeah, it is. But I think it's good to know that you can do this. You definitely don't want to go outside of these lines, because that will go into the next UV tile. So if we just kick out like one texture, we're gonna not be able to have that information on there. So hit D, hold V, snap it, hit D to get out of effect pivot mode, hold V. Oops, did I not put I didn't align my pivot apparently. Just eyeball it. This one I think can be a little bit bigger. Well, no, it's the right size. Yeah, because these should be bigger because we're like taking this surface and like flattening it out. So this is the correct size. Okay, yeah, we got some really nice UVs. So now what we're going to do is we want to kick this out because we want to be able to see where we're drawing in Photoshop. So to do that, we can go to Image, UV Snapshot, and I'll save it to the desktop, and we'll call this one crate UV underscore temp for template. We'll do 1K resolution, so we'll do 1024 by 1024. Okay. We're going to kick out that UV1 or U1V1 tile, so you can remember how if we wanted to kick out like different tiles, we could do that here, or we could do a range. Don't worry about that too much. This is super useful, these UV tiles, UDIM spaces, if you're doing like a character or creature that needs a lot of texture resolution. So if you're only working with 4K maps, well, you're going to need to put some UV islands on different tiles so you can have like two 4K maps. So maybe the face is on one because you'll have close-up shots, and like the clothes and everything else are on another UV tile. So that's where UDIMs and UV tiles come into play. So PNG, yep, we want a PNG because we want it to be transparent. So we'll hit apply. Wait, what? Oh, let's go to object mode, select, and let's hit this icon right here, apply. Okay, so you just have to go to the object mode of your model, and it should kick out that UV template. So let's, yep, it looks like it did. So in Photoshop, what we'll do is we'll bring in this UV template. And if I make a new layer underneath, just call this one background. And we'll call this one temp, or UV temp. So for this background one, let's just fill it in white because I think our lines are, yeah, so we can kind of see. Okay. So now the fun part. So back in the day, all we had was Photoshop. I think it's good to at least do like one texture in Photoshop, so you can kind of. I think it's easier to understand like what is going on. So remember, UVs are just a way to get our 3D model in a 2D space, so we can paint 2D textures on there. Okay. All right. So I have a couple of texture assets. I'm not going to go through and paint these. You are welcome to go through and paint your own crates. I think that's the better way to do it. I've seen really cool results. So I'll just drag this generic box texture in here. So something you'll notice, this is a pretty high resolution image. What you don't want to do in Photoshop anytime is scale up an image to get it to fit your textures, because you're just pixelating the resolution when you scale up. So let's hold shift. And what I'm going to do is I'm looking at this line here. Let's see if I can. Let's just commit to this for now. Make it so it's easier to see what's going on with the. Let's just make them white and then make our background black. Okay. So all I did was I added a brightness and contrast adjustment layer. Hold Alt, and if you hold Alt, you'll see you can make it a clipping mask. So this arrow shows up, and it's only affecting this layer underneath, which is my UV template one. Okay, so now that's a bit easier to see. What we're gonna do, let's line this up. So I'm looking at this edge right here because I know this face is the side. So I want to line up this with this. I want this X to basically fit inside this face. Either my box or the image isn't perfect. But if we saved it out like this, you can see we won't, like, this will be black pixels, right? So what we have to do is kind of chop this up. Let's bring a new one in because we scaled that one down. Let's kind of line up so that this is fitting on the outside. So I'm just looking at the border now. Okay. So this wood plank is like thinner than like what I have in space. So we'll have to do some. Really, we want to give it. We want to make it so it's a little bit outside of that island. So that we're making sure we don't accidentally paint black pixels. Okay. This one more black. So now what we should be able to do is add a layer mask. This is not going to be pretty. And what I would do is I'd go in and kind of clean this up with like content aware. So then what we could do is we can merge these. And then go in with like content aware or something. Strong tool. Patch here. And then just kind of clean that up. Spot hue. So hopefully you just use basic basic Photoshop techniques, like healing and repairing techniques, to kind of create your texture. Because oftentimes you're not going to find like one image that's just going to fit perfect. One more thing I'll do is I will here like a gray, and these are the creases, so I want to darken these up. So I'm holding shift to get these really straight lines. Then we can drop the opacity. Well, should probably did black. Yeah, let's make this black. I don't know why I did gray. So if we go to adjustment layers, brightness contrast, clipping mask. There we go. And then we can merge down. Clean this up. There we go. So let's hide our UV template and we can see kind of what our text. So yeah, again, I'll just kind of clean that up a little bit. It's really annoying, but really it's just these duplication things. So let's see if we can use patch heal to break some of it up. Because that's what's annoying, is like you can see like this pattern here and here. So we're just gonna kind of break it up. Alright. Actually, okay. That's good enough for this purpose, I think. I would go in there and like really dive in there and probably maybe even find a different texture that I can make for these bigger borders along the... Okay, so once we have this one, let's go ahead and we can merge these down, or we can create a group. I'm just going to merge them, and we'll call this one, this is the top, and let's unhide our UV template. So now this one we can duplicate. And it should fit. Oh no. Top was stretched. That sucks. Should have spent more time making sure these were aligned up a bit better. Or wait, no. I know why. Okay. Let's turn them 90 degrees. There we go. Now it fits. Because this one's the top one. So, like, I guess if this was a side one, this would be the bottom, this would be the top. If we wanted to. So, okay. So let's copy this one. Hold shift. Not going to be perfect. So let's select these two. Control D. Nope, that's not mine. Let's duplicate these. Hold shift. And for the bottom one, I would probably get a different texture. But I'm just going to do this one. Oops. We're not gonna see the bottom, so I'm not too concerned with it. Alright, so we have our boxes. So something we could do is kind of put some stickers on here. So I got this not safe for work sticker. Commit to something. There we go. Okay. Let's scale down. This one's just going to be on the top of our box. So we can either use a mask or an eraser. Let's mask. Let's use a layer mask. Delete this. Doesn't have to be perfect. So we'll probably use a blending mode that's going to negate the white. Okay, so Control T, I still think it's too big. There we go. So I'm going to set this blending mode to something like overlay or multiply. Yeah, there we go. And then Control T, and then I'll just kind of make it a little bit cooler, or make it look like it's a sticker by kind of rotating it at an off angle. And then if that red is like not the color you want, we can, let's name this one not safe. What we could do is we can add a hue and saturation adjustment layer on top of it. Hold Alt and bam, create a clipping mask. So you can't mess with the lightness, because then you can lighten it, but you can't darken it because it starts darkening that white value, and multiply will not work correctly if those pixels aren't white. So just be careful in this instance that you don't drop the lightness. What we can do is we can tweak the color if you want. We can drop the saturation to kind of make it match our background, or the planks, excuse me. What else can we do? Play with the hue, the saturation. If we want to make it a little bit lighter, we could. Something we could do is go into that mask and actually create sorry, I'm looking for some frayed edges. If you want, oh, I'm using the smudge tool. All right. No, I don't want to be the smudge tool. Brush. So make sure you change the alpha when you're in the brush. I was in smudge tool. Wait. Oh, it's just a smudge brush. Okay. Let's just grab like this one, I guess, and brush and change the alpha here. Okay. This is what. Okay. Yeah. You can start wearing the edges a little bit. It's really. Okay. Now to show that we understand the orientation of these, let's add an arrow so we know which way is up. One can be bigger, it's more important. And let's set this to multiply as well. Oops, I put it. Let's commit to that. Be careful, because I put it like in between that clipping mask and the not safe. So let's just add that. Alright, so for this arrow, let's name it arrow so I can just delete these numbers. Let's set the blending mode to overlay. Actually, this one's a PNG. Let's do overlay. Nah, that still looks bad. Multiply, I think, is going to give the best results. Okay. So yeah, make this pop because we want the person to know it's important, right? So let's go to adjustments, hue and saturation. Let's add it as a clipping mask above the arrow. And let's do the yellow's like caution. Ooh, it gets kind of lost though, so maybe we'll have to go with more of an orange than yellow. Something like that's okay. So once you get that, we can collapse it. So I'll just oops, not everything. No. Okay. Just merge these. Why can't I? Oh, wrong ones. Okay, merge layer, and we'll call this one air. Since we merged those, we basically got rid of the blending mode, so we'll just need to set that to multiply again. There we go. And I'll duplicate this layer, and we can put it on every side, or we can just do every other side, right? So I know it reads this way, so this is one side, this is the adjacent side, and this would be the next one. So that's why I know to put this here if I want to skip one. Okay? Extremely important. New people always forget to do this. Make sure you hide once you're done before you save. Make sure you hide this UV template layer, okay? Because if you don't, we'll see these white wires in our texture on our model. So let's hide this. What we're going to do is we'll go to File, Save As, and this one will be called Crate Diffuse. And can you put Photoshop? Let's see. I might have to do, let's save it as a Photoshop file, and let's also save it as a JPEG. So once we have that saved out, we can minimize this and let's come back into Maya. Oops, let's go back, hit U, and let's turn off that. Okay. So now what we can do is we can go to our hypershader, right? So this icon right here brings up the hypershade. And we'll use Arnold. Arnold shader surface AI standard surface. And what we need to do is basically, instead of using a color from our swatch to dictate the diffuse texture, we actually want to put a map, a diffuse map in here, a texture map. So let's click this icon right here. And these are the things we can plug in. So we need to create a file. And you can see in our node editor, it created these things. So now if we click here, you can see the properties changed. So we're inside this material, but we're down one level, because you can see the icon even changed here. So if we hit that, we'll go into that node right here. So this is the file node. And we need to assign a file in this file node. So we'll select this icon, navigate to our desktop. I'm going to try the Photoshop one. Yes, you can do a Photoshop file. Those are pretty expensive, but the nice thing about that is if you're in Photoshop, you hit save. I think it will live update in here. It does in Max, but you might need to reload it in here if it doesn't do a live update. Excuse me. So yeah, you can see what it looks like on here. Obviously, this isn't unwrapped for our texture that we made, but if we assign it to our box, it should look decent. So remember, to assign a material, select the object, hold down right click on the material, assign material to viewport. So you can see it got brighter. And if you want to see your textures in your viewport, you hit this icon right here. So now we can see that box. Okay. And it's pretty bad, to be honest. Like, I really quickly did stuff, so you can see, like, obviously the way I did the border was pretty jank. You would want to spend some time doing that. Spend some time making sure this shadow lines up with the actual face. See, it's kind of leaving that. But overall, not too bad for a quick and dirty texture. Okay, and you can see I got the orientation of my UV islands right. Up is up. This is the top. So yeah, let's just create a simple render. Since we looked at Arnold last time. So I'm going to create a plane. And this is going to be my backdrop. So I'm going to make it fairly large. Go to move, hold shift, that extrudes an edge. And our backdrop we can hit 3. Something we got to watch out for though. It starts curving right there. So let's get longer. Or we can just cut in an edge here. That actually starts holding that. Right, so we got this nice little backdrop. Okay. Let's quickly create an Arnold light. So if we go to the Arnold shelf, create this light, and we want to make it a little bit interesting. You don't want it straight flat because this is a box. You kind of want it. You definitely want it at somewhat of an angle so it's going to catch the sides. So make it bigger, and I will also like it's not moving in its axis correctly, but okay. And in our light, let's bring up the APR. So I just hit this icon right here. So again, you can see we're in interactive preview and I can't see anything. So in that light, I'll go to the attribute editor, I'll uncheck normalize, and let's beef up the intensity. Oh, something else I forgot to do in that material. You can see this box is shiny. Wood isn't shiny, right? So let's go into our hyper shade, and in that material, you can't see the material when this is active because it's saving resources. So let's close this. Hyper shade should load. I might have broken it. Oh, I didn't have something selected. I always forget. So right now we selected this, and so here are our properties. If you ever want to bring this back into the node editor, you can right click graph network and it will bring it back into the node editor. Okay, so right now it's pretty shiny. We don't want that. Wood is not shiny, so let's take that specular weight way down and let's bump up the roughness because wood is a rough texture. So we could have a little bit of reflectivity, but if we do, it's not going to be a lot, and it's going to be rough, so it's going to blur those reflections. So something like that. Alright, so now that we did that, let's get back into our interactive preview. That looks much better. Okay. So then we would just save this image out, and we have our box. So hopefully this was kind of helpful. UVs can be tricky, and it just takes a lot of practice, and the more you do it, the quicker you get at it, and the more you realize, UVs really aren't that bad. So I will see you guys next time. Have a good one.